understand. There is a maniac trying to kill us.
Welcome to New York.
Welcome to Hamburgers and Horror, the home of meat, monsters, and masked killers walking around Times Square. I'm Noah Hook, and today we're looking at Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. Just 1 year after The New Blood, Jason is once again resurrected from the bottom of Crystal Lake. This time the big squishy slasher stows away on a cruise ship filled with graduating high school seniors on their way to New York. How exactly does this quaint little lake suddenly fit cruise ships and connect to New York, you may ask? Who cares, because we get more Jason killing horny teens on a boat! And yeah, he eventually gets to New York, I suppose. With The New Blood having a disappointing box office, Paramount opted to drop John Carl Buechler and his proposed sequel that would have followed Tina Shepard. Curious to see where that would have gone. Frank Mancuso Jr. handed the reins over to Rob Hedden, who had directed a couple episodes of the Friday the 13th series. Manhattan is Hedden's most well-known project, but he has gone on to write and direct a lot of TV movies, including Clockstoppers, The Condemned, and You May Not Kiss the Bride. Hedden had one goal and one goal only: get Jason out of Crystal Lake. He originally wanted the entire film to take place on a cruise ship that Jason stows away in, but ultimately decided to land the finale in the city that never sleeps. New York was originally going to be way more integrated into the story, having Jason interact with a whole bunch of important landmarks within the city. We don't exactly get much of that in the final version due to Paramount being stingy though. The film stars Jensen Daggett from Home Improvement as Rennie, Scott Reeves from Nashville as Sean, Barbara Bingham from Romance on the Menu as Colleen, Peter Mark Richmond from Pool Hall Junkies as Charles, Vincent Craig Dupree from South Central as Julius, Martin Cummins from Poltergeist The Legacy as Wayne, Kelly Hu from The Scorpion King as Eva, and Kane Hodder reprising his role as Jason. The film was primarily shot in Vancouver, with only a very small amount of scenes actually happening in New York City. Cinematography was handled by Brian England of Sometimes They Come Back and Cheerleader Camp, and the score was composed by Fred Mullen of Fast Company and Loosed Screws. Mullen assisted Harry Manfredini on The New Blood, and this was the first Friday film not to feature his iconic work. I'll give it to Mullen though, he makes up for it with some absolute bangers here. Jason Takes Manhattan ultimately grossed $14 million at the box office, becoming the new worst performing Friday film at the time. It obviously wasn't loved by critics either, who found it formulaic, overly long, and just a waste of a really fun premise. It currently has an 11 and 27% on Rotten Tomatoes, and a 2.2 on Letterboxd pretty firmly rates this as one of the worst in the franchise. I'm truthfully not a very big fan of Manhattan and rarely revisit it, but who knows, maybe this time around I'll find some charms that I missed in previous watches. I hope you fuckers like boats, because we're watching Jason Takes Manhattan. The movie opens on some very misleading shots of New York City's troubled, apparently toxic, waste-ridden streets, but we won't return to this hellhole for another hour. First, we return to the hellhole we all know and love, where horny couple Jimmy and Susie are getting freaky on a boat. They anchor right next to the newly rebuilt Camp Crystal Lake, just happening to come across a big-ass power cable. Jimmy tells her the story of a lackluster version of little boy Jason's death, his crazy mama, and his subsequent series of murders, culminating with an electrocution to wake the slimy bastard up once again. I've asked once and I'll ask again, why do the police keep leaving his body in that lake? It's only like 15 feet deep. Jimmy gives Susie a scare with his inexplicably great replica of Jason's mask, but the real deal hops aboard and grabs a spear gun. He narrowly misses a headshot and Susie flees, so Jason simply uses the gun itself to impale Jimmy. He grabs the spear and hunts down Susie below deck, and the terrified girl sits there for an eternity as Jason slowly stabs her in the chest. Time to meet the cliche medley of teens boarding the SS Lazarus for their graduation celebration. We've got final girl Rennie, who has a troubled past, and a good boy named Toby. Her bland, handsome love interest Sean, who for some reason is constantly being hounded by his ship captain father about maritime skills. Rocker girl JJ, thirsty film bro Wayne, boxer bro Julius, besties Tamara and Eva, one of whom is the class bitch and the other of whom is a grab bag of Asian stereotypes.
If we get caught, I could lose my science scholarship and everything.
Talking to the prom queen, Eva.
There are a bunch of other students on board, but basically all of them have 0 lines and get killed off screen. We've also got chaperones Charles and Colleen, both of whom are teachers at Lakeview High School. A deckhand notices a ghostly boat making its way to shore, just as Charles notices that Jim and Susie have no-showed. He's also pissed that Colleen brought Rennie along, as he's her uncle and legal guardian and doesn't believe she's stable enough to enjoy this trip. She has some vague aquatic fear she's trying to overcome, and Charles reluctantly allows her to stay. The ship starts its engines and Jason hops aboard. The teens enjoy shuffleboards, shooting clay pigeons, and a very 80s dance floor, but Jason gets to work quickly as he follows JJ down into the ship's lower deck for a jam session. Damn, why couldn't JJ have been our final girl? She seems pretty chill. Ah well, Jason puts his teleportation to use and smashes JJ in the face with her own guitar. We start to see why Charles wanted her on the mainland, as Rennie has begun having visions of little boy Jason, who, again, looks way too fucking normal. Also, he fucking talks now? Okay. Toby flees and Rennie goes searching for him, narrowly avoiding Mr. Voorhees. Charles nearly catches Tamara and Eva on a ski trip and threatens to keep them on the boat once they reach New York, also wanting to see Tamara's quote-unquote biology project tonight. Meanwhile, this poor fucker trying to enjoy a sauna gets a hot rock shoved in his torso. Kalima! Worried she might snitch about the cocaine and knowing she has a fear of water, Tamara pushes Rennie off the boat? What the fuck? She nearly drowns as little boy Jason drags her down, but luckily Sean dives overboard to rescue her. Now Charles is extra pissed, telling Colleen and Sean to stay away from his niece. Ah, goddamn, now a more deformed little boy Jason is coming through mirrors and shit. Meanwhile, Charles gets his bones jumped by a scantily clad Tamara, which is recorded by Wayne in an order to blackmail him, I guess? Girl, just do your final project. How is this easier? Wayne confesses his hots for Tamara, and he is immediately rejected. Tamara's mean girl streak is cut unusually short though, as Jason follows her into the showers. He busts through the doors and smashes a mirror, using a shard to stab her off screen. A storm kicks in as Jason makes his way to the bridge, where first mate Jim is killed with a harpoon. Up next is Sean's dad, Admiral Robertson, who gets a slow-mo throat slash with the dull side of a machete. Rennie and Sean decide they want to call the Coast Guard in order to leave for some reason. Great use of our tax dollars, kids. So they of course find the freshly added corpses. Sean hops on the radio to gather everyone in the bridge and even contacts the Coast Guard for help. Ah, come on, Jason. The creepy-ass deckhand who has been rambling about doom this whole time appears to warn them that Jason has returned, making Charles believe he is responsible for the murders. Julius and his bros head out to hunt down the killer, and Jason watches as Rennie successfully drops the anchor. Charles finds and stops her before the big man does, though. Eva finds Tamara's body in the bathroom and runs right into Jason, fleeing into the chaotic party room for a final dance. For some reason, all the other doors are locked, and Jason teleports himself all around the room until he's able to grab her by the throat. He kills Eva with a standard strangulation, yeeting her across the dance floor. Julius, Wayne, and the other boys have collected a stockpile of weapons and begun their hunt, with Wayne searching the lower deck for JJ. An exhaust sends his glasses flying below, and the nearsighted nerd kills a crewmate. Jason don't take kindly to sharing victims and slaps his camera away, and he follows as Wayne runs into JJ's body. He yeets the young man into some technology, which of course electrocutes him and bursts into flames. So now the boat is on fire and the alarm is blaring, so Charles grabs the flare gun in order to hunt down the sketchy deckhand. Next, Jason hunts down this guy named Miles, teleporting around the ship and up the flagpole to toss this boy to his spiky death. Julius comes across this carnage and gets yeeted into the ocean for his intrusion. Rennie has more stupid-ass visions before she's attacked by adult Jason, but she manages to stab him in the eye with a pen. She's found by Sean as the power room starts to blow, and Colleen gathers up the last of the background characters so they can all be killed off screen together. The ship is straight up sinking now, so the 4 known survivors head for the lifeboats. Ah, we forgot about this fucker. Yeah, he dead. Jason watches as they board the lifeboat, somehow bringing Toby the absent dog with them, where they also pick up Julius. They row through the foggy night until they finally reach New York City. Maybe y'all should pay another Wayne I know a visit. They dock the lifeboat at some strangely deserted docks, where Jason has somehow followed them too. Did he swim, walk on the bottom, hang on to the boat, teleport? Who knows and who cares? After an hour of boredom, we can finally start getting money shots like these. The group is immediately mugged by a pair of punks, one of whom tries to shoot Toby. Don't worry, he lives. Then they straight up kidnap Rennie and threaten to kill her if the group follows, so the group splits up to find the cops. These dudes fucking drug her with the intent to rape her all night long. What the fuck is this crazy left turn we're taking? But somewhat fortunately, Jason arrives and kills the junkie with his own needle. His buddy shoots Jason quite a few times, but we all know that shit doesn't work. Rennie flees and Jason follows, but somehow he first runs into Julius as he's calling the cops. Jason follows the boxer up to a rooftop where Julius is hoping to get some sparring practice in. Jason allows him to get a hilarious amount of punches in before showing him what a true horror heavyweight is capable of. The drugs start to hit as Rennie runs into Sean, warning him that Jason has followed them here. They meet up with Charles and Colleen, who have successfully flagged down an officer. Neither Charles nor the cop buy that Jason Voorhees is here, but they're both surprised to find Julius's severed head in the cruiser. Jason pulls the cop into an alley before he can call for backup, and Rennie hops up front as Jason appears in front of the car. She runs him over before being distracted by this, and she crashes into a wall. These 3 just leave Colleen behind in the car, which proceeds to fucking explode. Bruh. I know y'all have been on the edge of your seats to understand why Rennie is afraid of water, and this flaming puddle is going to show us the way. Yeah, it turns out Charles was a questionable swim coach, tossing his niece into Crystal Lake and forcing her to figure it out for herself. Yet a different variation of little boy Jason pulled her down, I guess, so she's just always been haunted by little boy Jason. What a satisfying explanation. Bro, how is there still 20 minutes left? Rennie tells off her uncle and Sean body checks him, leaving him alone to be chased by Jason. He runs into a factory only to be cut off by the teleporting menace and yeeted out a window. The abusive uncle isn't quite dead yet, so Jason ironically drowns him in a drum of toxic waste. These 2 are just hanging out in a dangerous alley talking about their trauma and sucking face, I guess, allowing for Jason to not so stealthily catch up. They flee down into the subway, but the big broke bastard must have hopped the turnstile. These New Yorkers couldn't give a fuck less about the chase scene happening around them, but they sure are pissed when Sean pulls the emergency brake. They push Voorhees onto the 3rd rail to electrocute him, but these noobs don't know that's only good at bringing him back to life. Rennie and Sean ascend into beautiful Times Square, but Jason isn't far behind. Rennie notices they aren't alone and they make a run for it, and Jason takes a moment to greet the locals.
Yo man, it's cool, man.
He follows them into a diner and throws future Jason Ken Kurzinger into a mirror. they fucking somehow end up in the sewer system, which of course comes with its own absurd dangers.
Toxic waste, son. The sewer floods out with this stuff every night at midnight.
Sean gets knocked out and the friendly plumber is quickly killed with his own wrench, so Rennie distracts Jason with a flashlight, okay sure. She lures him away from Sean and comes across a bucket of toxic waste, don't question it too much. She throws it onto Jason, revealing a bad case of melty face. Also, he sounds like a dinosaur now. She returns to Sean and they climb a ladder as Jason stumbles after them, but the damn thing has a grate blocking their escape. The tunnels begin to rumble as a flood of poop water rushes towards them as Jason throws up and says more stupid shit. Jason is overpowered by the current and pulled in, reliving his childhood demise. The toxic waste recedes and all that's left is a normal-looking little boy. I assume this is just another vision only Rennie can see, but who the fuck knows? The two make their way back to the surface and opt to check out the Statue of Liberty, and they even run into Toby. Good boy! The movie ends with another fun song as the sun begins to rise over the city that never sleeps. And that's Jason Takes Manhattan. Unfortunately, this is a pretty big swing and a miss for me. There is some particularly bad stuff that we'll talk about shortly, but generally Manhattan just doesn't have anything that it does better than any of the films that came before it. The cinematography and sound design are pretty bland, the editing constantly bounces around the boat in an illogical way, the dialogue and character motivations are generic and forgettable, the kills are weak, and both child Jason and unmasked Jason look questionable to say the least. But there are definitely moments here to appreciate as well. Those moments when Jason is actually within a recognizable part of New York are instantly iconic. It's actually crazy to me that Paramount refused to increase the budget for more New York to be in the film. I can imagine a version of this that would have taken the world by storm. There are also scenes within the boat and sewers that add some great atmosphere to the film. This wet, rotting version of Jason really feels at home in these settings. Kane Hodder turns in another strong outing as Jason, really getting to up the camp this time. In reality, it's really stupid and pretty racist at times, but from a storytelling standpoint, I love that they made New York the absolute scariest place on Earth. They hopped off a boat and within seconds were robbed at gunpoint, kidnapped, forcibly drugged, and almost raped. Welcome to the big city, kids. I do think Julius had a fun gimmick and his final fight with Jason was very entertaining. And while the toxic waste is also really stupid and totally not a real thing, it is just preposterous enough to be a fun inclusion in the finale. But there is just so much here that feels unnecessary and half-baked. First of all, the movie is just too long. There are so many uncut and extended scenes that could have been chopped done or eliminated to make the film feel more sleek. Everything involving Rennie and little boy Jason should have been cut. It adds absolutely nothing but some shitty visuals of a wet little boy. And the grand reveal of her childhood trauma was capital B boring. We totally sidestepped the fact that her parents died tragically only to focus on the fact she was thrown into a lake by her uncle once. Like, yeah, it's kinda shitty, but it's not shitty enough to be the crux of a Friday the 13th film. There's obviously the widespread critique that this film mostly takes place on a boat, so I'm not gonna harp on it too much, but I have to agree this is really a wasted premise. Part 8 does take Jason out of Crystal Lake, but it somehow mostly places him in an even less interesting setting for most of the film. Its kills are incredibly bloodless and off-screen thanks to the MPAA, and it really takes Jason's tragic death and makes it feel downright goofy. It's filled with lazy writing that's only there to keep the plot moving in contrived ways, despite the fact that the plot is just really killing time for the first hour of the film. It lacks the suspense, gore, and memorable characters of previous installments, and most of the memorable moments of this film are remembered for being bad. As I said, this could have been a really cool premise, but unfortunately Jason Takes Manhattan never manages to find its sea legs. It has enough stupid shit in there for me to still have a fun time with it, but there are other Friday the 13th films I would go to have fun before I'd go to this one. Well, that's about it. What do y'all think of Jason Takes Manhattan? Are you bigger fans of it than I am? Let me know down below. Soon I'll be watching a big nasty worm possessing people, but first I've got to check out a patron request. Hope y'all are in the mood for something fucked up, cause in 2 weeks we'll be checking out The House That Jack Built. Well, that's about it. Thank you so much for joining me, and an extra thank you to my patrons. As always, I'm Noah Hook, and thanks for watching Hamburgers and Horror. Stay safe out there. Thanks for watching my review of Jason Takes Manhattan. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe so you can keep up with all my horror reviews. And if you want to help support the channel further, you should check out my Patreon account. You'll be able to vote for future movies and franchises I cover on the channel. Thanks y'all.